Hey, Dylan Fry, the real estate guy, here to be your guy for any real estate needs in the Kansas City area. Today, we're doing one of our weekly interviews with a local business person that's going to be able to help you out in your transition to the Kansas City area, or if you're already living in Kansas City and you've got some water features that need taken care of. I've got Will Patrick with Good Earth Water Gardens, and what they're going to be able to do is help service all your water features as well as take care and inspect those water features, and we're going to really get into that today. If this is your first time on the channel and you like these weekly interviews, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and also hit that little bell so that you'll get notifications of our future weekly interviews. But let's get into it today. We're going to be talking with Will about what things you should expect when you're looking at buying a house with a water feature and just other things about the Kansas City area. So let's get into it. Let's start off. Hey, Will, tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got started in this venture, and then just tell me about what drives you to help people out with their water features.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. I have worked with Good Earth Water Gardens for about 3 years now. Got into it because I thought, it's a super niche, cool thing to do. I like connecting people with something that they can enjoy, gives them a reason to stay at home, a reason to go out into their backyard and really just enjoy it more. It's kind of an immersive experience. Beautiful landscaping is nice, but when you have sight, sound, something you can enjoy out by your deck, it just brings a little extra something to the table. So I've really enjoyed being able to connect local Kansas City homeowners with koi ponds, waterfalls, just something more unique for their landscape.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about yourself to just get our viewers a little bit more insight to who Will is. Tell me about your background a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in Kansas City since 2003. I grew up in the Prairie Village area. I went to KU, so pretty local Kansas City boy. I've always been interested in, kind of aesthetic luxury things that you don't necessarily need. My first role out of school was for a fine jewelry store, so connecting people with diamonds and engagement rings, and then I moved over to koi ponds. So it's kind of another just enjoyable aesthetic, not necessarily a need, but something you can enjoy, and I've really enjoyed doing that, connecting people with just an enjoyable experience. So that's why I enjoy doing what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you wouldn't think that those two are connected, but they really are, because it is one of those things where people don't necessarily need it, but when they want it to be done right. They want the proper diamonds. They want to make sure that these things are going to last for a good amount of time. And when it comes to water features on homes, just from talking to you, I didn't understand it prior to that, but there's a lot that goes into it. Tell us a little bit about what people can expect in the Kansas City area if they're buying a house with a water feature. What are some hiccups that they could run into?
Well, the first thing I'd say is just, try not to think of it as a secondary or afterthought. A lot of times, when you're buying a home or thinking about buying a home, it's not something that's first and foremost in the conversation. You're focused on a kitchen and, things you see in every home. It's obviously more unique, more rare, something you'll occur, but that makes it kind of an afterthought. People forget to ask the proper questions. During an inspection process, it's not going to come up. It's really not something that's addressed the same way a pool would be, or the things you think about. It's something that often gets forgotten or thought about secondarily. So I just want to kind of bring it more to the conversation, make sure it's a little more on front of mind. And even if it hasn't been something you've ever thought about, if you have a home, if it's your forever home, you're going to retire there, have you ever considered having a water feature in your yard, something that gives you sound and movement, something to enjoy?
Yeah, and I think that those things don't come up enough when you're looking at a home, because a lot of times, even during inspections, they're not checking out those water features to make sure there's no cracks, leaks, or anything like that, or that's not one of the things that's to be inspected on the inspection report or anything like that. They're like, hey, I get somebody to do it, but nobody ever does it.
Well, it's a problem I run into, unfortunately, time and time again, and when it's too late. New homeowners, they've purchased the home, they've gotten in there, but they never ask the questions. And like you said, during the inspection process, it either gets overlooked or they just don't dive into it. And if you've already moved into the home and then you think about it, hey, let's have Good Earth out, take a look at this, you might find, it's not as simple or as put together as you believed when you moved into the home, and then you've got some repairs, fixes that you weren't expecting. So I always just want to make sure people think about it and don't, neglect it or forget about it until it's too late. And then you call me and I'm offering a solution to a problem rather than, giving you some foresight beforehand and hopefully prevent those situations.
Yeah. So what are those questions that they should be asking?
Honestly, if I could just get it as part of the conversation, I'd consider that a great first step. Just have your inspector look at it. Say, hey, there is a koi pond in the backyard. Let's not forget this. Maybe have the sellers declare outright, is it leaking, is it not? Do we know that there's any issues occurring? A lot of times it's not an issue, but if there is an issue, whether the sellers know about it or not, if you inherit that issue, it can be costly. And it's something you might not think about, you might not expect, and then it's an unfortunate conversation when you call me, and it is a costly repair. So I would just like you to address it, make sure that you've kind of taken out all of the worst case scenarios, make sure it's holding water bare minimum, it's not faulty in its mechanics or crumbling, stones aren't falling over, stuff like that, stuff that is going to need to be addressed. Don't think it's not going to cost you a little bit to get it taken care of properly.
Yeah, because people are looking at that as like, that's more of a aesthetic. It's not something that they necessarily need to be fixed, but that could be one of the biggest repairs that they're looking at. So you're looking at going into this water feature, you're buying this $500,000-$600,000 home, and it's got this water feature, and then after you move in, you find out that one, it's leaking, two, it's not, and it's not holding water, or two, it's not. Maybe it's not running correctly, it's not filtering correctly. Those repairs add up quick. What do you think a repair on something like that? I know they're going to vary, but what's some of the bigger and smaller ones that you've seen?
Yeah, and that's where, it can be such a wide range, and it varies based on the situation. If you've got a feature that's integrated into a hardscape, built over a retaining wall, or built into a retaining wall, think of what's involved if that's leaking. If you've got a liner bottom feature and all of that liner is under a large retaining wall under several tons of boulders, the only way to fix it is to bring in machine, move that, it's going to cost you. So doing that due diligence before you move into the home is going to save you quite a bit. And this is the type of conversations you're never going to overlook with a pool. If you are going to buy a home with a pool, you're going to know, and the inspector is going to verify that it's not leaking, that you're not going to inherit thousands of dollars of repair. Unfortunately, in today's world, they're not going to do that with your koi pond, your waterfall, and some extensive features. No matter how big they get or how large they are in the landscape, inspectors still are just kind of ignoring them, and the questions aren't being brought to the table. So I just want to make sure that it's not an afterthought and you explore these types of scenarios before you buy the house.
Yeah. So what does that look like? Do you guys do any inspections for somebody that's looking to buy a home? So what do they need to do to make sure that that is properly inspected? Because I'm going to be honest, there's very few inspectors that I think would understand if looking at a koi pond or looking at any of those things, just because of the lack of them having to do it, is they're not going to be able to tell if it's got a slow leak or something like that that's going to cost you thousands of dollars in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I would encourage those who are in the real estate market looking to buy a home and their realtors to just have a resource in your back pocket, someone such as myself or a company like ours that you can call and ask these questions. Maybe you don't immediately have to have them out for an inspection, but if you just call us up, call myself, have the questions answered, or what questions you need to look for to avoid the worst case scenarios and the costly repairs. Maybe you need to have us out for an inspection, and we do that. We're full service. We'll come out, take a look, help, offer repairs, and everything in between. But the first thing is to get the conversation going, ask the questions, talk to someone such as myself or a water feature company to get the questions answered.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. So talking a little bit about, with you guys being full service, so I know one thing when people are looking at buying a home and it does have a water feature, they're looking at that as a thing that needs to be maintained. And sometimes that can be something that people don't really want to get into. So talk about, you guys do maintenance as well, correct? You'll do the upkeep and make sure that things are going well with those water features?
Absolutely. I tell all my clients and people who reach out to us that it's going to be based on what's best fit for you. We have clients that want to be very hands-off, don't want to worry about it, and we can put them on a monthly maintenance package where we take care of it. It's entirely hands-off. Or if you want to be more DIY and handle it yourself, we'll provide the education, be there in your back pocket for when you do run into an issue, teach you what you need to know so that you can handle it. Maybe we come out once a year for a cleaning or anything in between, monthly, quarterly. What's going to be good for you? If you're hands off, great. If you're DIY, great. Just make sure you're doing it the right way.
That's huge. I think that's huge. Anytime you're looking at getting into something that has water features, is you need to make sure that you know what you're doing with it. And having you guys as a resource, I know I really appreciate it, because anytime somebody brings up, or I'm out shooting a house and it's got a water feature, I instantly think of you and say, hey, I need to make sure that he knows about this one. So that way, if my clients were to buy it, or if I was to have somebody in there that's looking at it, then we're able to tell what the entire scenario is, what they're looking at for those costs, because those are costs that not everybody's going to think about.
Absolutely. And I want to, give new homeowners fair upfront expectations. Even when issues aren't occurring, there is a cost and a time involved in maintenance, just like anything. It's very similar to your landscaping. The more you neglect it and get away from it, the worse it's going to be, more costly. But if you keep up with it, do your daily, weekly routines that are needed, and do the preventative measures, then it can be much easier on a maintenance side. For any given feature, it really just depends on size, scale, and how much you're willing to do and how much you need us to come in for. But I would say, I certainly wouldn't tell anyone that it's no maintenance or even low maintenance. Fountains are obviously much less maintenance than a ecosystem koi pond with fish. But both can be pretty manageable if they're designed right, if you've got the right knowledge and are doing the right things, and you're keeping up with your due diligence. It doesn't have to be a very timely and costly endeavor by any means.
Yeah, and people can reach out to you I encourage you to, if you're looking at getting a new water feature, you want to see where would be the best spot to put a water feature and how you could make that look, and the architecture behind it. You guys do that full service as well, the complete new builds as well, correct?
Absolutely. As much as we love the maintenance side, because we don't want to build these features and leave them behind and make it the homeowner's, problem, responsibility to deal with. We want to be a lifelong partner and stick with them. But obviously the construction side, design, is where we really thrive and enjoy and get out of bed in the morning to create these new, really beautiful backyard landscapes. And it is, you said it best, we take a lot into consideration. Viewpoints, where do you spend your time in the yard? Where's your kitchen window, bedroom window? Do you spend more time at the fireplace, or do you spend more time in your covered deck above? Thinking about the angles, viewpoints, how are you really going to have a full, immersive, enjoyable experience, something that makes your backyard feel like a vacation. We take all of that into consideration when designing, building these features, so it really kind of gets elevated to an art form.
Yeah, which isn't anything that I would think about, because I'd be like, hey, this looks really good over here. Well, it might look really good over there, but you're never going to see it.
People make the same mistakes, and it's not, it makes a lot of sense. They do it for reasons that make sense to them, but then when we explain, hey, here's why we do this, because we do it every day, it begins to make sense. So a lot of people will have a spot in their yard that needs something. It's a back corner by the fence or a garden bed that just is not being used, and they'll think, okay, let's maybe do a koi pond here because it'll fix two problems. I have an empty spot, and then I can put something nice there. We try to take it a step further, and we avoid what we call destination features, ones that are far out away in your yard that you're really not going to go enjoy. It's going to take extra to get you out there to enjoy that feature. Where instead, we want to bring it up close to the house, up by the hardscape, by the window, so you can hear it, enjoy it, step out your back door, and you are in your water garden oasis. That's the idea.
Well, and that causes, when you have those destination features, that causes issues right there, because then it's an added maintenance.
Absolutely.
That it's out of sight, out of mind sometimes.
Yep. You're not going to do as much. You're not going to venture out there as much as you would if it's close. You're not going to see the issues as readily, or you're just going to neglect it a little more if it's further away. Absolutely.
Correct. So let's dive into that, or dive into a little bit different, because you've grown up around the Kansas City area, you're a Kansas City guy. So talk to the people that are watching this. If they're looking to move to Kansas City, what are some areas that they should go look at? Maybe some water features out there that are pretty cool around the Kansas City area. What are some places that you would advise them to go see?
Well, the great thing for us is we're the city of fountains. Works really well into what we're doing, my marketing efforts, all that good stuff. It's great to be the city of fountains, and there's a lot of beautiful commercial fountain features all over town. You know them from the plaza area, has beautiful, recognizable fountains, and downtown you'll see them. In and out of the Prairie Village area and Mission Hills Fairway, you've got fountains everywhere, so that's wonderful. And then we've got really beautiful places in town that you can go see features like this. Lots of parks, the Arboretum. My wife and I argue about this. She'll love this. She calls it the Arboretum and says I'm wrong. I say she's wrong, and then we'll let the fans decide. But there's a lot of great places in town, gardens, fountains all over the place, great water features.
Yeah. So what if you're looking at taking your wife out and you guys are not arguing about what a place is named? Where are you guys going? What are you going out to look at and going to do when you're in the Kansas City area?
We went to the Nelson not too long ago. I remember that day. That day was fun because there's all sorts of great things to see inside and outside. The outside grounds of the Nelson are fun. Big park area. If you're a local, you know the shuttlecocks. You can picture them clear as day. If you're a non-local, they'll catch your eye when you move to town and you see a giant shuttlecock outside the Nelson. But they've got some cool features, fountains, all sorts of fun stuff to see. I like going to the Arboretum. We go to parks. The plaza's fun. And she works at the Legends. There's just a lot of great places in town to get outside and, walk around.
Yeah, and see and meet different people, and also just go and enjoy the day and enjoy the area around you and check out some cool water features as well. So let's talk about some things. If somebody's moving to the Kansas City area, what are some things that they need to be prepared for? What are some things that maybe it's not a normal hiccup, but sometimes you're like, I wouldn't have
Well,
this
it takes a while to get used to the volatility of the weather. You and I were talking about that this morning. We're kind of waiting for the real spring to break. It's just so up and down. I've got in-laws out in San Diego, and I'm jealous of their 70 and sunny, every day. But weather is one thing that gets to me time to time. It's not Minnesota, but our weather gets a little crazy up and down. Other than that, the city's great. I pick issue with that we don't have an NHL team. I'm a hockey fan myself, and we don't have an NHL team, but kind of a double hit on the city. We don't have an NBA team either if you're a basketball fan. So I'm going to give them a 2 check marks for that, as we need to get better in that.
Well, and a lot of the arenas for NHL and NBA, they can be used for both of them.
Absolutely.
So we should just find somebody that wants to invest in the Kansas City area and brings an NHL team and an NBA team at the same time.
Kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah.
You heard it here first on the podcast. It's a good idea.
It would be a great idea. I would love the NBA side. I'm not a big NHL fan, never have been.
See, we can share. It works.
I would love an NBA team.
Yeah.
And I think that there's plenty of space, just with how flooded both leagues have been with talent right now. There's a ton of opportunity for them to be able to do an expansion team and then bring new players in.
Well, and on the flip side of that, you got to love the sports we have currently and what we've been doing as a city. It's great to see the Chiefs, doing so tremendously well. I really love going to the Mavericks game. If you can't go to an NHL game, if you're in town or if you're a local, go check out the Mavericks. It's a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, and then Sporting KC, I know, is doing wonderful. And there's a lot of good things that are happening around the city. I mean, we're holding the draft this year.
Yeah, exciting.
So that's going to be huge. That's going to bring a lot of business in. And I know they're talking about different developments as they expand more into the Northland. And that's going to be huge, especially for you. Hopefully, with us being the city of fountains, that as that continues to grow over there, they're going to be needing water features and bringing that stuff in as well.
Yeah, let's hope so. The more, the merrier. Yeah, it's one of the things I love about the city. I said I got here in 2003, and all I've seen since then is just a lot of really exciting, great growth in our city. That was pre-Power and Light. The Kauffman Center wasn't there. We didn't have a lot of the great things we have now, all of the additions they've made to the city from the streetcar and everything in between. And then, like you said, more exciting things around the corner, the Northland developing, all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah, I think it's growing tremendously, and it's only going to get bigger.
Absolutely.
And everything keeps getting a little bit better. So let's go back to the water feature side of it with the weather. What are some hiccups that people run into when their first house with a water feature and they're taking it on for their first winter or whatnot? What are some issues they need to address going into that?
It goes back to just, having the proper knowledge. Make sure if you find yourself in that scenario, you're heading into your first winter with a water feature and you've never done it before, contact someone like myself or a company, get your questions answered. But I like to talk about it as an asset of our features, and what we do is a lot of them, excluding some of the very small fountains, can be run year round. Where with a pool, you might get, a fraction of the year, good months before you have to shut it down and cover it. Our features, most of them run year round. They'll form ice over them on the waterfalls, on the fountain features, and they take on a whole new beautiful look, but they'll continue to run in the winter. Not every feature can do that, but a lot of them can, and it's just a wonderful thing that you can enjoy not only year round, but it's one thing in the summer and a very different, beautiful feature in the winter.
Yeah, and I think that would be awesome. Is just because even with how gruesome the winters can get sometimes and how up and down they are, but it does look beautiful when you have those ice hanging off of stuff, and it's really got that crystallized look. It does look awesome. And as you're driving around and you see these different fountains and they have that look to them, it is another aspect of what a water feature could bring to your home.
Yeah, absolutely. We just finished a feature earlier in the winter on Metcalf that I'm sure a lot of people, several hundred cars drive by there every, hour. So I know a lot of people have saw that throughout the winter, covered in ice, still flowing. It certainly catches your eye as you're driving by, and a lot of people have probably seen it, wondered what it was, and it's just really interesting to see how the ice forms, and you'll still see the water flowing at night with the lights hitting it. It's just very cool look.
So you've seen a lot of bad situations. I'm assuming that you've seen a lot of bad situations that you went into with people getting in over their heads when it comes to water features. Do you have any good stories?
We can get into some fun stories. Obviously, worst case scenario just lends itself perfectly to this conversation. This podcast is people who have just purchased the home, never asked the questions, and inherited a costly repair because they have a nice, beautiful koi pond that was probably something they were excited about. It might have even been one of the reasons they chose the house. It turns out it has a leak. They call me. Their new home is coming with a costly repair. So that's kind of the typical worst case scenario. As far as interesting stories, one thing that people not in our industry think is interesting or fun to hear about is we cannot keep the birds and prey from getting the fish. Birds and predators from getting the fish out of the ponds. Just, anything from raccoons to cranes. Nature is elusive, and no matter what tricks we try, we're installing today a motion censored hose setup that will shoot water at them when they get by the pond. Anything we can to try to deter the predators. But we get those calls where people will have beautiful pet koi that have been taken by a crane.
Oh my gosh.
That's one we deal with.
So do people insure those?
We don't have many clients that have the really, really expensive exotic koi fish just for those reasons, honestly.
Correct.
Because it's nature, it's volatile, and they could be taken away by a bird in 5 minutes. We don't have many of those. We have some big, beautiful koi that people care about because they're their pets. They name them and they can get several feet long, and there's beautiful fish. But we don't really have many of the high-priced insured ones.
Well, and that's something you need to think about with little animals, regardless of what they are. Is if there is a ton of birds, hawks, different bald eagles, and flying around the area. We were just out the other day, and I watched a chicken hawk come down and grab one of my mother-in-law's chickens.
Oy. And it happens. It's crazy. You don't believe it until you see it.
Yeah, and it is one of the most crazy, frightening things you can witness. Is they come down and they snatch them up, and it's a pretty gruesome scene. But they come down and take them. So we ended up having to re-rig her chicken coop so that they couldn't get into it. And then yesterday I was out there, and I'm walking out, and I seen it just sitting on top of it.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, you can't get in there, but it's watching them.
Yep, absolutely.
It's watching them like a hawk.
Yeah, and that's why we see that problem a bit. There's measures you can take, but nature will find a way, and those birds are going to get the fish one way or another.
Well, that's kind of the if you want to look for the good in it, is those birds do have to eat, and they have to find a way to find their food, and that's just part of nature. It's just the cycle of life.
And it circles back to one of the things we love about our features is they are all natural ecosystem features. We don't use chemicals, chlorine, and we're now one of the new things in our industry are recreational swim ponds, an alternative to your typical chlorine pool where you can have a natural boulder, koi pond-esque swim feature that you can wade in, swim in, and it's naturally filtered. Once again, no chlorine, no chemicals. It's just kind of
That's
an
awesome.
alternative look and an alternative functionality. But that's kind of if you want to consider something, if you're thinking about putting in a pool, you'll do your research of gunite, fiberglass, different type of pools. Look into recreational swim ponds. A very interesting, fun, exciting thing you can put in your landscape.
What kind of area do they have to make that beneficial?
The bigger the better. It kind of breaks into two conversations. One of the things you have to take into consideration when you call it a recreational swim pond, regardless of size, is you just want to make sure it's really well filtered. It has a lot of that natural filtration so that you have clear, enjoyable water.
Yeah.
It's always going to have some, film, algae, what have you on the rocks, but it's going to be much, much cleaner and more enjoyable than your local pond. You're going to keep water moving, keep it heavily filtered. But to really be able to wade and swim in it, you'd probably want to give yourself maybe a 30 by 30 area minimum, or just some sort of sizable feature. But we make ones or have seen ones that are smaller, and they're just designed to be more wading ponds, we call them, and just
Correct.
super highly filtered and beautiful aesthetic.
And I would assume the maintenance side of those are cheaper, but what is the initial cost? Is it quite a bit more than putting in an actual pool, or is it kind of on par with it? Or
I wouldn't say more than a pool. The pool prices vary based on what type, gunite, fiberglass, what have you, but pools are certainly not inexpensive. I would say that typically to get into a recreational swim pond, to do it right, to give you something that would be an alternative to a pool, would probably be a six-figure project. There's always possibilities to tailor it and do something smaller that is still that category but is on a tighter scale. But probably a six-figure project to do it right and do something that is going to be a lifetime beautiful asset to your home.
that would be interesting to see one of those. Because now, do you build like waterfalls into it as well?
Yep, it'll be a whole beautiful grotto oasis in your backyard. Waterfalls, big, large, natural boulders, and everything in between.
That sounds awesome.
And it's your choice if you want to swim with or without fish. You can put fish in there and swim around with them, lily pads. Some do, some don't. That's up to you. Personal preference. You can put turtles, frogs, whatever life you want in there can go in there, natural ecosystem, or you can keep them out. Personal preference.
So you may be biased on this, but is somebody looking to put that into a property? What should they expect on return value? And this may be more of a question for me, because when you put in a pool, you're talking about maybe 20% of what you put into it.
I was going to say I wouldn't be able to speak to it any better than you would on terms of ROI. It's certainly very personal. You'll have people who will run into that home and it'll be a deal breaker because they're afraid of the maintenance. They just don't want it. If you have, it depends on the feature. A smaller feature, that's usually not going to be a deal breaker. But if you run into a backyard where half of the yard is a koi pond and a waterfall, some people are going to see that as a deterrent and not want it. Some people, it's going to be an asset. And we've had people time and time again that tell us, oh, yes, I purchased this home because I or my wife, they fell in love with the water feature and they had to have it.
And I think that's going to be more of your one-offs. Because when you're talking about selling a home, you're trying to cater to everybody. Mm-hmm. And what's going to bring most of the buyers in here? And I know I've personally experienced this, where we go down and sit down at a home, and they spent maybe $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 on this enormous water feature, and it looks beautiful and everything, but it's about a 50-50 split. You're going to have 50% of the people that absolutely love that and they're signed up for it, and they're like, yes, we want this. And then you're going to have the other 50% that are like, see it, and they're like, if this wasn't here, I'd buy the house. Yep.
And that's very true. And I would never approach it in the sense it's like redoing your roof or redoing your deck or anything where this is putting an investment and ROI expectant into the house. I wouldn't look at it through that lens. Really, if you're going to put six figures into a recreational swim pond, that is because you yourself are going to wholeheartedly love it, enjoy it. You are going to bring your friends and family to your yard, and every party you're going to want to have at your yard because you love your backyard so much. It's just that's what's going to make you put it in the ground and that's one thing I tell people is you will call me or you'll think of doing it because you'll think about the view. You'll think of, oh, that's something that's going to be beautiful to look at. You'll fall in love with it because of the sound. If you're a coffee drinker, wine drinker, what have you, if you're sitting out on your deck, that that natural waterfall sound is really enjoyable. It's soothing, peaceful. It really add to your enjoyment and the time spent in your backyard.
Well, it helps break up your thoughts. I mean, you're sitting out there trying to decompress. I mean, a lot of us are working long hours, even if you're working from home or anything, you're working a lot of hours and stuff. And then you get out there and you get to hear that. I know a lot of people spend money on white noise machines and stuff like that that do the exact same thing. And being able to have that and watch that. And I absolutely love it. I grew up on 40 acres, so we had different water. We had a creek that ran through, and there was different spots where you could sit and you could just listen to the water. And not on the scale that you guys are putting in, but you still get that same aspect of getting to listen to the water and just how much it decompresses you. People don't realize that.
Absolutely. It's an immersive, enjoyable experience. We like to say we're trying to reconnect homeowners with nature, trying to bring nature into their backyard, give them a reason to both stay home, but step outside of their home into their backyard. Make it feel like a vacation a little bit. Or nowadays, so many people working from home on a beautiful day, work out on your back deck with the sound of a waterfall nearby and overlooking your koi pond with koi fish and water lilies. How enjoyable is that?
Yeah, it makes you feel really good about what you've purchased and what you've done, and then just makes the day go a lot easier.
Yep, I'm jealous of our clients. I don't have a koi pond in my yard, but every day I'm jealous of what we're putting out there. It's really beautiful stuff, and if you have the opportunity, take a look at what we're putting out there and see if it's something that you would enjoy in your yard.
So that's the other side of it. Where would somebody go if they're wanting to see just some of the things that you guys have done? What are they? Do you guys have a website as well? Where do they find all the features that you guys are building out?
Yeah, there's a lot of great places to see our work depending on what's best for you. You can go on our website, obviously, photos, a lot of good stuff there, but we're also across all the social medias. If you're a YouTube person, you can watch our projects from start to finish, full-length blogs. We go into detail on how we build the features, what goes into them.
What's your YouTube channel?
I believe it's still under Good Earth Outdoor, but if you search Good Earth Water Gardens on YouTube, it'll pull up our page, and
awesome.
You'll be able to see all those projects. That's a great way if you like the full video, want to see more about it and get some of that education. If you want more just quick visual content, Instagram, Facebook, we're there as well. You can see those. And then in person, we have an outdoor water garden showroom as well that we invite people to by appointment to walk around the garden, talk about likes, dislikes, boulders, size, scale of a project. And so you can really feel it, get an experiential look at it before you decide, is this right for me?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that. How do they go about getting into your showroom to where they can see those different water features and just see if it's the right move for them?
Yeah, as I said, it is by appointment. We want to, rather than just have an open garden that people can venture in and out of, we want to do it to where we're answering your questions. So when you're walking around the feature, you're going to have all sorts of questions about winter, koi fish, proper maintenance. And we want to spend the time and just really educate you, answer all your questions, walk around. So you can go on our website, fill out contact form, or get in contact with us. Give me a call, give us a call on the number. It's very easy to get to us. I'm sure you're going to put all the info below, but if you're in the Kansas City area, we want you to reach out to us with any questions, thoughts, or if you just think, hey, I've never thought of a koi pond. It's kind of fun. I heard the podcast. Give me a call.
Yeah, that's awesome. And his number is going to be listed below. So that way, if you're thinking about getting a koi pond or anything, or just want to talk about different water features, maybe you've got a feature that needs looked at if you're in the Kansas City area already, then give him a call. So to just go on that, I really appreciate you coming out today, but give me I always ask for everybody's elevator pitch. Why should somebody, if they do have water features or they're looking at putting in a water feature, anything like that, why do they go with Good Earth?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we try to approach it and elevate it to an art form. Approach it as an art form, elevate it to an art form. Some people, landscapers, good and bad, what have you, contractors will say, oh, it's putting a liner in the ground and putting rock in there. That's not how we look at it. If you're going to spend the type of money that's involved in doing a project of substance in your yard, we want to do it right, both from an aesthetic standpoint and on a low maintenance standpoint. We want it to be designed properly to function so that you can spend more time enjoying it rather than fighting maintenance and calling it a hobby on a good day when you're really just out, working yourself to death. We want it to function properly so it's enjoyable elevate it to an art form so that when you're looking at it and when you're showing it off at your party, you can really be proud of it.
Yeah.
And that's why we think if you give us a call, you're going to enjoy working with us. We're very customer centric. We know how it can be working with contractors on long projects, how you can get yourself in over your head, or they can, string you along on a process that's less than enjoyable. We don't want to do any of that. We want to make it smooth sailing, as enjoyable a process as it's going to be when you enjoy that feature when we're done. So that's why I'd say you should call Good Earth if you're thinking about a water feature.
Yeah, and I am going to second that thought. If you're looking at getting a water feature, anything like that, these guys, just from spending time with Will, talking with Will, he is there to take care of you. And that's a big thing. That's a big thing about why I'm starting this podcast, is to get people that are going to take care of the people that are moving to the Kansas City area or that are already living in the Kansas City area. I want people that are going to educate them, just like you talked about earlier, are going to help them achieve their goals and achieve the things that they want, which this is a huge want for everybody. Anybody that's looking at different water features, that's a huge one of theirs. And having somebody there to educate them is huge. So I would definitely reach out to Will. I really appreciate you coming on today. If this is your first time to the channel and you really enjoyed this interview, make sure you hit that like button. Also hit the follow button and then hit that little bell so you'll get notifications of future people that we bring in to educate the public on how they can help them and how to make life in Kansas City go a little bit easier. And if you're looking to purchase in the Kansas City area, or maybe you're looking to sell your house and you don't really know what steps there are, if you have a water feature and you need some help, make sure that you are disclosing everything about your feature and whatnot, give me a call and I'm going to be able to connect you with the proper people as well. And my number's listed below as well, and you can also reach me through different stuff. But again, Will, I really appreciate you coming out today, and I appreciate everybody that got to watch the interview, and hopefully everybody grabbed some good tidbits from this interview as well.